Welcome back. We are talking updates to Ivanti's vulnerabilities. If you didn't catch the original video, I'll have a pop-up right there in the top right. But we'll go ahead and give you a quick recap before we jump into the new news here. So for starters, there's two vulnerabilities that were really causing issues over at Ivanti. So the first news of this came out January 11th. Two vulnerabilities that we had there. One was an authentication bypass, the other one a command injection. And basically what they're doing is allowing attackers to get past typical authentication methods and then running commands against the VPN and NAC solutions at Ivanti. So you'll see ICS and IPS are the two solutions at Ivanti that really got hit. And the next thing that came out was January 19th from CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. So a government agency, they issued their first emergency directive of the year. So they were basically telling companies that they needed to mitigate Avanti 0 days immediately. So Avanti had come up with some instructions and they needed to be implemented. The reason why, pretty much these were pretty sensitive applications and they were allowing attackers to move laterally within the target's network, exfiltrate data, and then establish persistence by setting up a backdoor in there. So pretty bad stuff. So definitely important to get that taken care of. And then straight from Avanti, we had some mitigation instructions. So they provided steps on how to mitigate what was going on with their appliances. And then they also provided some steps on how to restore the impacted appliances. So all that stuff is from the original video. You'll check out the description below. Like I said, we'll have the pop-up come again here in the top right. If you need to check that out, feel free to step away, watch that, come back and get up to speed here. So this is all new information going forward. On January 30th, we got information of CrustyLoader. This is part of what delayed Avanti 0-day patches going on here. And the news of them being delayed was caused by CrustyLoader, amongst other things. I mean, one, it's hard to create a good patch that actually blocks out everything that's going on, especially with the backdoors that have been put in place by these attackers. But a quick overview of CrustyLoader. It's basically a well-hidden backdoor, runs under very specific conditions, and it's difficult to understand for the blue team members that are trying to understand what's going on with CrustyLoader, understand exactly where it's persisting at. So it's really hard to find and isolate and get out. But just one day after that news came out about CrustyLoader on January 31st, there's some news that there's patches being delayed, or sorry, there was new 0 days that had come out, but there was also some patches that had finally come out. So we'll give a quick overview of what those patches were. So there were two patches that popped up here, or sorry, two patches that have popped up here for CVE 2024 21887 and 2023 46805. So these are the two original patches, or the two original vulnerabilities that we talked about in that first video. So definitely important that you got those two taken care of because they were the big problem causers back at that time. And just because the patches have been released doesn't mean they're not being exploited, because every company is not rolling out these patches right as they're released. So there's still a lot of unpatched systems out there, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into how wide this exploit is right now. And you'll see just because the patches got released doesn't mean everybody's mitigating it. It means there's still a lot of vulnerable systems out there. And there is still exploitation taking place by UNC 5221. So if you remember from the first video, that is the Chinese state-backed group. So basically being funded by Chinese government. And there's believed to be others that are exploiting this vulnerability as well. But we have a little bit of the explanation behind the why from Ken Dunham of Quali Threat Research Unit. So you can read this quote here. The skinny of it is basically they're stealing information. So stealing configuration data, modifying existing files, downloading remote files, and reverse tunneling into networks. And digging a little bit more into two new flaws that have been popping up. So this is from the Hacker News. You'll see the headline, Alert, Ivanti discloses two new 0-day flaws, one under active exploitation. So what does that look like? Let's see. There are two here. So these are the vulnerabilities. One's a privilege escalation vulnerability, and the other is a server-side forgery vulnerability. So privilege escalation, just basically if you get in with a guest or low access account, you're able to escalate those privileges either laterally, but more often is vertically to get them more administrative privileges, so stuff that you can get access to more within the system, cause more problems, set up backdoors. Those other certainly bad to see. And this is the one that is not being exploited right now, so that's all good. And then the other one is the server-side request forgery. So basically, the server side is the Ivanti side of things, and they're forging requests that come into the server so they can modify them in the way that they choose. This is the one that appears to be targeted, as you'll see in that paragraph down below. Ivanti said it's aware of a limited number of customers impacted by that issue. So certainly not as widespread as the first two that we talked about, but still out there, still causing issues, and definitely not good for Ivanti. But next we're going to jump into some news that originally came out on January 31st, but this article from TechCrunch came out on February 1st. Basically a notice from CISA, the federal agency, that government agencies had 48 hours to disconnect flawed Ivanti VPN technology. So if you had something online, you needed to get it off as soon as possible. So this was by February 2nd of 2024. That was the timeline that they needed to get it down. And you'll see this quote here up top. So agencies running affected products, so ICS and IPS solutions, they have to get it down by 11:59 Friday, February 2nd of 2024. So that time has passed at the time of this recording, so every federal agency was required to have it down by this time. And CISA also gave a lot of details on what to do here. So this next link is from the CISA website. Again, all these links are going to be down in the show notes. So anything you want to read more about, get more in depth, go check out the description, check out that detail below. But these were the required actions that they gave, and I'm not going to go through them all step by step, but I'll give you a quick scroll, and you can see they're pretty detailed in what you need to do and by when, the actual steps for going through this, and they also provide a lot of links to Ivanti's mitigation and recovery links that we talked about a little bit. So they give quite a bit of details here. And I mean, if you're a company, government agency or not, these are great steps to follow, as you'll see in this quote from the Velocity founder, Stephen Adair. So there's this quote right here. CISA has effectively directed federal agencies on a method for deploying what would be considered a completely fresh and patched install of the ICS VPN device. So if you're anyone, whether government agency or not, worthwhile to follow these steps. I mean, it's straight from CISA, links to Ivanti material, and you'll know you're getting a fresh and secured instance when you run through this. So if you're in that spot, check these out. The next thing I wanted to show you was the scope of the attack. So we've talked a little bit about why it's going on. We've talked a lot about some of the impact that's happened, but how widespread is this? So we talked in our first video that there's over 40,000 companies using Ivanti, and Unit 42, which is a Palo Alto Networks company, they're really good at the deep dives in these security type instances or incidents. They've observed 28,484 exposed instances of ICS and IPS between January 26th and January 30th. So this is just exposed, it's not breached, but I wanted to give you the baseline for how widespread or the exposure is, about 28,000 instances. So next I want to show you this graph here from Shadow Server, and I'll scroll down slightly. I guess my camera is, let me slide that down so you can see it all. And we'll come right back up in a second. So this is showing what has been actually compromised. So you'll see the tags here. We've got the Ivanti Connect Secure, so just that VPN appliance. And then this is the compromised website source. So you'll see the results here. It ranges from January 15th here is when the graph starts. The exploits start coming in on January 16th, and they dip a little bit, peak around the 22nd. And this is around the time that a lot of the mitigations were coming out from Ivanti, so they really ramped it up, wanted to get the attack in, essentially. Hey Diggs, thanks for stopping by. How's it going, man? But you can see over that time, there's a lot of exploitation that has taken place, and the graph stops on February 4th. There's going to be more data that comes out as time goes on. So today's February 5th. It only goes, it's one day before the current day. So if you check back in on this link, which is again in the description, you'll see more information on how many exposures or how many compromised websites there's been. But right now, there's about 8,900 compromised instances. So about 30% of the total between January 16th and February 4th. So there has been a lot of compromise. So if you're one of those couple 20,000 or so that has been compromised, super important to get mitigated and patched and follow those CISA and Ivanti instructions. And something to note is, I know we talked about new vulnerabilities and new instances like that going on. You'll see here straight from the Ivanti website, and I'll scroll up a little bit. They mentioned as of February 1st, everything that they know of has been patched. So the patch that they released on January 31st, or right around that time, covers everything. So the new vulnerabilities that popped up, the original ones we talked about, should all be covered by that February 1st patch, at least according to Ivanti. And if you made it this far in the video, we're going to continue updating as the story continues, so feel free to subscribe, and I appreciate you watching. Thank you.